So Democrats are making some moves now. Finally, they've come up with a little bit of a plan, at least, to react after the overturning of that monumental Roe versus Wade decision. So in particular, they're using a little bit of the tactics that were floated during the force the vote conversation previously, and putting Republicans in a tough spot, taking votes to the floor on issues that are going to divide the Republican electeds, and also that put them out of step even with the majority of their own base. So first one that we'll talk about here is Democrats in the House put up a bill that would secure access to contraception. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. So you'll recall that in that his concurring opinion, Justice Thomas sort of floated, these other things like the right to contraception and gay marriage. I personally think those, if you follow this logic here, those should also go away. So that has caused Democrats and a lot of people around the country to say, whoa, we need to make sure these rights are protected as well. So Democrats put up this vote on the right to contraception, and the entire House Republican caucus, save for 10, voted against ensuring the right to contraception. The handful that voted for the right to contraception, a number of them, I'll just read you the names. It's Cheney, Mace, Upton, Kinzinger, Katko, Fitzpatrick, Salazar, and Gonzalez. 4 of those are about to retire. Cheney is about to lose. Yeah. So even the ones that voted for it, and there were 2.
Too, he's out, right?
There are 2 present votes. Yeah. But of the 8 that actually voted for the right to contraception, birth control, most of them are about to be gone.
I think it's very smart. I mean, this is what I said, which we were talking about. We're like, okay, look, the votes on Roe, they're not there. 15 weeks, I think they actually might exist. And if they don't, well, people are going to have to stand up and are going to have to ask questions about why exactly they voted against it. And this is the perfect example, which is that this was something guaranteed. I think it was 1965. It's like Griswold v. Connecticut in terms of contraception. So, obviously this was one of the major breakthroughs in American civil society, and it changed the entire country. It's kind of been a foregone conclusion at this point. I don't even know if we have any polling on it because,
it's just so fringe.
So one of those things where people are just, okay, so I'll try and represent the opposition. I actually asked, I was like, is there any reason in order to support this? Apparently there is a form of hormonal IUD, which is considered by some people who are religious to be analogous to abortion.
What?
I'm just representing what I have heard. So there's this one particular form of, I think it's the copper IUD. And look, I'm sorry for getting into this, but as I understand it, that is one which they consider to be like abortive in some
form. The copper
form.
IUD is actually very common and is I don't know if that's actually the one that they're worried about.
I think
that's like the most standard one that you can get.
Well, I think that's the hormonal IUD versus the copper one is, anyway, again, I don't really know. But from what I understood and what was represented to me, that is the quote unquote religious objection to overall contraception. So they're like, well, if they've carved that out, it's like, okay, well, I mean, I don't really believe it. Yeah. But I'm just saying that is the justification for which the vote is. And you actually found this.
Well, that actually, in some ways that makes it worse, because the only thing I could come up with is that they just didn't want to give Democrats a win. Yeah. So it was just like pure political calculation. But if they're actually responding to the 2% of the country that has an issue with this like copper IUD or whatever the hell it is, that's in some ways that's even more troubling, that they are so responsive to the absolute most extremist part of their base that they would vote against something that, this has got to be like a 98% issue in the country. That is pretty wild.
If I had to guess, it's probably the hardcore folks are the ones talking about copper IUDs, and the rest of them are like, I just don't want to vote for anything that's a Democrat bill.
They're trying to come up with some kind of... Anyway, there's at least some conservatives on Reddit who are very confused about this.
Not representative, but still interesting.
Yes, exactly. This isn't, a poll. Although, again, I do think if you polled the Republican base on access to contraception, you would overwhelmingly get people like, yeah, of course, obviously, birth control. And if you care about preventing abortions, by the way, access to contraception, one of the most effective ways to bring down the number of abortions, and has been very effective as it has become more widespread in doing so. So here's a little bit of the commentary from conservatives. One of them says, this is from the conservative Reddit. Birth control has literally prevented more abortions than any other entity, hands down. You have people who are just genuinely trying to figure out why anyone would be voting against this. You have someone saying this is not even a government will pay bill, so there's no argument here about like, oh, we're funding it, whatever. Someone says, who is voting against this? I really want to know. I'll be watching my Republican congressman regarding this. My mother and I are conservatives and fully support it. We believe birth control prevents abortions. It's a good thing. So there is at least some dissent among the true believers here about why Republicans are having trouble with this.
Reddit, obviously overwhelmingly younger, more representative. So listen, I mean, it's not representative, but I did think it was an interesting catch. The reason why I think this stuff matters is that this is entering pop culture discourse in a way that politics hasn't in a long time. You know, abortion, most people kind of did, most people were had their minds made up on abortion. And as we saw, the enthusiasm, it's a slight gap or increasing for the Democrats, but a lot of people, minds were kind of made up. If in the future, to the extent that this will become a thing, it's going to be stories like the 10-year-old rape case. And eventually, I think this will all culminate in some crazy Terry Schiavo situation like 9 years from now. After somebody writes a bill and then it gets enforced, and somebody who's like dad raped her at age 9 is going to be forced to carry a term pregnancy, and it's going to galvanize the whole country and it'll change everything. But that's a long time away. This, I think, is similar in that the contraception one, again, I see it entering pop culture in a way that I haven't in a long time, almost since Obergefell, like 2015.
Yeah. The
gay marriage debates. And look, I mean, personally, I think a lot of these things were very, long decided, and I don't really know why you would pick a fight. Look, even politically, it's one of those things where
just vote yes, move on.
Just, yeah, exactly. Be like, okay. At a certain point, don't you want to deny the opposition the ability in order to club you over the head with one of your most unpopular decisions? The only alternative is either A, you think that you won't suffer a political price for it, which you may not in the immediate term, but in the future, I certainly think. I mean, let's say that I don't think the court will. However, Justice Thomas, I mean, in a certain way, he made Democratic fears, he realized them at the ultimate level. Because he was like, okay, then all of this is on the table. Which the talking point for a long time was, it's just abortion.
I mean, if you do follow the logic of the Roe decision, the legal logic, it does lead you to all of these places. So, I mean, he's kind of the one that's being upfront about it, and conservatives are like, shh, don't say that because this is uncomfortable for us. To your point, Democrats for a long time have been saying, since the sort of politics of the Tea Party era and when you started having all of these increasingly stringent abortion bans and trigger laws and trap laws and all this stuff being passed across the country, Democrats have been saying, even contraception is on the table here. And Republicans are kind of, you're being ridiculous, you're fear-mongering. Well, when you have the entire Republican caucus, save for a few dissenters who are basically wildly out of step with most of the caucus at this point, when you have that entire caucus voting against access to contraception, you are just confirming the worst caricature of your own party. And so I do think for a lot of people, this is kind of a like, wait, what moment? It's like, what do you people actually believe? Who are you actually serving? Like, who are you afraid of? What is this fringe part of the movement that you are really beholden to? There's the other piece here. And by the way, on contraception, very unclear. Obviously, it's passed the House because Democrats have control, and you did get support from a handful of Republicans like Liz Cheney. But very unclear whether this will ultimately get through the Senate.
What the future is.
Yeah.
They may not even take it up.
Very unclear whether they take it up, whether there are 10 Republican votes to overcome a filibuster. Very unknown. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.